I got a really cool update on the Jeep. I know a couple weeks ago, it was a few weeks now, but we posted a video of my Jeep when we were replacing the crank position sensor, and after we replaced it, we had no idea still what it was. I do have to say that when I first got it and it was doing this, I sprayed the vacuum lines down.
We did try.
Religiously.
Yeah.
And it really didn't stumble the engine or anything like that. So after I replaced the crank position sensor, I brought it into work the next day and I replaced the ignition control module. It's basically this module computer, the brain of the ignition system that sits behind the ignition coil. And it was only $80. You know, my thought process behind it was, if it didn't work, then I have a new ignition control module and I have a spare one that still works.
Yeah.
So I replaced that and it was still the same exact thing. It would misfire. So being really frustrated, I actually, my shop foreman, my boss, he went over and had a peek at it, and he took a can of brake clean and actually stuck his hand to the back of the motor, kind of by where the intake manifold is, the back of the intake manifold, and sprayed a little bit of brake clean, and the motor pretty much died. So we duplicated the issue that I was having while driving while it was idling with the hood open. So basically it was a major vacuum leak at the intake manifold.
Yeah.
So,
well, hold on. While we're right here, I think that even though we did try and we did do that, that because you said it progressively got worse.
That's the other thing, is when it was cold, it really didn't do it. But when it got hot, I guess that the gasket, the intake manifold gasket, kind of like expanded or something.
But it must have gotten worse over time.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Now when he sprayed it,
it just went. It went
enough,
to hell.
Yeah.
So I brought it home that evening and I started pulling the intake off of it. Unfortunately, I didn't get a video because I was by myself and my hands were completely covered in, all the grease from 1989. And I didn't want to get my phone dirty or anything like that. But if you do have any questions on how to pull an intake off of a Jeep, torque specs, whatever, I have it all. And just leave a comment and I'll be sure to answer your question.
Yep.
So anyways, I pulled the intake off. And I pulled the front bolt off for the intake, and the whole intake actually flopped over. And I looked back there with a mirror, and I saw that it was missing one of the intake manifold bolts. So the whole time it was not fully seated in the back of the motor where the intake manifold should be on the block.
And that's where the gasket was destroyed. Do you still have the gasket?
You know what? I think I might have the gasket somewhere.
We're not going to look for it.
I'm not going to look for it. Actually, you know what? I know where it is. Give me 1 second.
You can have all the seconds you need.
While I'm looking for that.
Pretty much what ended up happening was Cameron pulled the intake manifold off and found that the gasket was destroyed and that none of the bolts were securing the intake manifold down except for one. And when he pulled the intake manifold off, he saw the gasket, and
I actually have the gasket.
This is what the gasket looked like.
Yeah, I'm just telling you that is no good. And what I'm really surprised about, which is I'm sure what you're surprised about too, is how well it did run with the gasket like this. It's amazing how it ran that good, even though it wasn't running that good.
Did you take off the exhaust manifold?
I did. Because it shares a gasket.
Yeah.
So on these, same thing, so 2.5s and 4.0s on Jeeps and 4.2s as well, they share an intake and exhaust gasket. So yes, I did have to take the...
Well, my question is, what if... Because you have exhaust, correct?
Yeah, I believe
was
that's
the
how it
bolt
goes.
Loose here for the exhaust? Because that's probably what cooked the gasket.
Here's the thing is, I forgot to mention that when I did take, the first bolt out, and there was still other bolts holding the intake and the exhaust on, I did not have to put any pressure on my wrench to take those out. They were almost finger tight.
Really?
It was unbelievable, yeah. So it was just a major vacuum leak. So long story short, I put a new gasket on it and torqued all the bolts to spec. I also, while it was out, I got this... I don't know how well you can see it, but these gaskets are for a Jeep with like different vacuum systems. So it came with all the gaskets, but I didn't need all the gaskets.
Did you ever replace that?
Yeah, I did. That's actually a different one.
Really?
Yeah, this is a little screen that Mo was showing, but it's for the fuel injector, and it's like another little filter before the fuel actually goes down in the injector. But I rebuilt the TBI injection system, and the O-ring for the injector was completely disintegrated too. I don't know if I told you that, but the O-ring was dust. It was gone. And now that I have everything back together, I've been driving it for about a week now, and it runs and drives absolutely amazing. It stays about 190 when the thermostat opens. It has a lot more power, and it's just a lot more of a pleasure to drive. So if you have any questions, please comment or send me a message, and I'll be happy to answer your question. Stay tuned, guys. Thank you.